All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for another edition of our Franchise Your Business webinar series. My name is Tom Dufour. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And if you're new to us or this program, if you haven't ever been here before, the goal of these sessions, and it has been for about 4.5 years now, is to bring you relevant, interesting information that's applicable to growing your business, whether it's a small business, a franchise company, or anything in between. That's the whole focus of these shows. As a quick housekeeping item, as a reminder, we will republish this on our YouTube channel. So check us out at Big Sky Franchise Team on YouTube. And then also on our second podcast that we have called Franchise Your Business, available at any of your favorite podcast services, from Apple's podcast to Spotify and a whole bunch of others out there. So please make sure you subscribe to us there. And with that, I will go ahead and introduce our guest today, Jaci Lund. And Jaci, she's got a great bio here, so I'm going to go ahead and read through this. She's with Treebird Branding, and she is Jaci's quick wit, attentive listening, and innate intelligence are evident from the first meeting and resonate through her branding, graphic identity, social media, and marketing solutions, which, by the way, is part of the reason I wanted to have her on here. She was an introduction through a mutual friend. She blends strategy, sophistication, daring, and restraint to craft original branding for new concepts and refresh established brands with timeless classic designs. Jaci built Treebird from a home-based startup to a full-service firm by prioritizing listening and continuously learning. She values collaboration, working closely with visionaries and entrepreneurs to transform raw or polished ideas into vibrant, effective designs. One of my favorite things about Jaci and our meetings beforehand is just her clear attention to detail and her vision to see things where others can't see it, won't see it, or can't see it. So with that, Jaci, I'd love to turn things over to you for your session here today.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to be here and talking about, two of my favorite topics, branding and restaurant. I know not every business is going to be watching is restaurant, but I do, that's kind of one of our key focuses over at Treebird. And so just, kind of talking through today on, brand strategy, positioning, do's and don'ts. So I'm just going to dive, right in. So,
Great.
oops, all right, here we go. Hey. So you did a really good intro, but I'll just say, I'm Jaci Lund. It's pronounced Jaci. If you got it wrong or thought it was Jackie, that's my parents' fault, not yours. So I own Treebird Branding. We've been around since 2011, and we've branded over 500 businesses or so. I have a husband, I have a daughter, June, and in case you're into the Enneagram, I am an Enneagram 3.
And then, I'm a huge Enneagram fan, so that means a lot to me.
Yeah. Yours?
I'm a 1. I'm a 1.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. I love a 1. They're all good. So I wanted to give a little bit of background as like, how did I get here and get into branding and have this agency? So I went back to early stages. And so I found this photo of me when I was a kid with my little crayons in my hair. So I felt like I was always destined to be a creative. I moved around a lot as a kid. And so, a skill set I learned there was learning how to read new audiences, which is really handy to have as a brander. I was a passionate artist, and so weird in high school. I ended up at Michigan State. I was a comms major. Really, I was just there to party. And so I ended up moving down here to Atlanta. I went to a school here called Creative Circus. That's where I really, their tagline was, where weird kids become employable. And that really spoke to me. And so that's why I learned, the art of graphic design. I ended up going to an agency. It was a PR agency that focused mostly on restaurant. And I was there for 5 years. I became their creative director, and then it was time to go. And so that's when I started Treebird 12 years ago. So that's how we got here today. I have a couple goals for what I would like for everyone to be able to just for the day, like for the half hour, 45 minutes that we're going through this. So we want to face some branding fears. Acknowledge maybe some potential mistakes that you're making in your brand, or also warn you not to make them if you're starting a new brand. I want you to understand that strong roots equals lots of healthy leaves. That doesn't make any sense right now, but it will shortly. I want you to understand how to build trust with your audience. And then, of course, I want you to lose with some tools and knowledge for next steps. Sound good?
That sounds great.
All
That sounds
right.
great.
So here we are. This is where you might be with the state of your brand. You could be starting a new brand. And so, this is where we're going to face some fears. This is where you might have some concerns about whether or not you're going to be capturing the right audience. You might be worried that your brand isn't going to stand out or be memorable in a crowded space. And you also might not know where to start, how to prioritize, especially if you're bootstrapping, where to put budget, where to hold back. You might be expanding a brand. I'd say most businesses are here or should be here, right? So, you have a brand, but you may be concerned that, it might be time to change it up or expand it, but that growth might dilute your original brand message or your values. You could have anxiety about overextending resources or losing essence of what was working in your, previous brand. And just not being sure where to go next. You also could have FOMO on opportunities because you've outgrown your brand. A lot of times audiences change, technology changes, and so you just could have some concerns there. Uh, then there's also the, sometimes feels like a dreaded rebrand. The brand isn't working at all. Sometimes it's that like a name change and we're completely gutting it, or it's, we're doing a rebrand, we're still preserving elements. But there's a lot of fear around a rebrand. You don't want to alienate your loyal customers. You might have some doubt over the new brand and how it's going to resonate. And also, there's a huge cost that goes along with a full rebrand. It's easy to do a rebrand if you don't have a lot of buildings. But if you're a franchise and you've spent a lot of money on signs, that's when the rebrand can get kind of stressful. And then, of course, the final stop is you might really not be sure about branding at all. You may have a logo, but you're not seeing the system that is a part of. So you could be overwhelmed with options. You might be lacking some direction. You're also probably operating your businesses and you're busy in the day to day and you're not really spending a lot of time on pesky branding. And that, you could have some concerns about your becoming irrelevant and lacking, you know, innovation as far as your brand goes. So that's where I imagine folks are. Like I said, a lot of times people are kind of in this zone here.
Hey,
So this, oh,
JC,
good.
real quick, are you sharing your screen? I'm not seeing that come across on my
Oh
end.
no, I thought I was sharing my screen. I'm just talking. Hold on one second. Here we go. All right, can we see it
Ah,
now?
there it is. Yeah,
Oh
there we
man, you're
go.
missing all this cool stuff. All
Yep.
right. Hold on, let me try this one more time. Don't you love it? Okay. We can see it now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, anyways, here's the state of your brand. Take a screenshot. And again, at the end, there's an opportunity too where you'll be able to download the presentation. I'll put it up. So, all right, let's get into our brand goals. And this is true for any brand, whatever state that you're at, and why we do this work is that you want to build brand awareness. You want to create an emotional connection with your audience. You want to differentiate your product or service. You want to create that credibility and trust. We're going to talk about that a lot in a minute. And then, of course, motivate purchasing, which I always joke we put that at the bottom, but that's usually our number one goal. So this is one of our favorite quotes about branding that we talk about a lot about here at Treebird, which is a brand isn't what you say it is, it's what they say it is. And so this is from Marty Neurmeyer. And so this is the kind of mentality we want us and all of our clients to understand that your brand is not about you. It is about your audience. They are your heroes, they are your everything. And so they're supporting you. And so everything has to be for your audience. And so here's some of the mistakes that we see that companies can make when they're, having issues with their brand. Their branding could be inconsistent, and there's a lot of science around consistency. I'll be talking about that in a minute as well. And that things are just not aligned across all of the different platforms. You may be neglecting your brand strategy and just jumping into design or marketing efforts without that kind of clear path. For us, and not understanding your audience, these are kind of tied together. For us, it's really important, of course, that we have like a sales process, but you can't have that without understanding your audience's buying process first. So by having that strategy and understanding that, that's how we're able to craft brands and do marketing strategies that speak directly for them and create that emotional connection, building that credibility and trust. Another issue that we see is ignoring brand evolution. And that's what I was talking about, brands needing to be, are typically in that expansion phase at all times. If you're not visiting your brand and making these small tweaks along the way as you need to for your audience, that's where you can kind of get into trouble and get in that dreaded, like full gut rebrand space. And then, of course, there's another issue is the lack of authenticity. Trying to be something you're not or mimicking the competition. Your audiences are very discerning and they can tell. And so they want to make sure that they're interacting with a genuine brand that speaks to them and isn't just, oh, so and so has a circle, now we have a circle kind of situation. So here's where we have your brand as a tree. And so this is how we kind
Hey,
of, oh,
hey,
go
JC,
ahead.
just real quick, on my screen, I'm still seeing the "How did I get here" picture.
Man, we are struggling today. All right, I'm not gonna do full screen mode. I think that's where we're having the issue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. All right. Here's brand goals, our mistakes. Now we're
There
into
we
your
go. Yep,
piece.
this is great.
Okay. Good. So sorry about that. Don't you love when technology gives you trouble? All right. So here's your brand as a tree. And so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see. So this is our visual to help explain roots and leaves. So at the base of every brand's tree is your positioning statement. This is how we talk about ourselves. And when we do positioning, and we'll also value prop, I'll show you some tools for that in a little bit. What we're describing here is your category of one, which is what can you claim that no one else can claim, your brand promise, your unique methods, your distinctive values. This is all what needs to be written in your voice. There's a lot of tone that is set here at the root of your tree. Next is your trunk. So that's your identity. This is what we project out into the world about your brand. So this is your logo, your visuals, your website, branded materials, collateral, sales kits, all of that. Then we have our branches. So this is interaction. This is what your audience communicates back to you. So this is interactions with staff. This is inquiries, in-person meetings, online sales. This is where you're still present, existing as part of your brand. So here's where things get wild, our leaves. We have no control over leaves. I mean, we do when we have a strong foundation, but we have little control over our leaves. This is conversation. This is what audiences are saying to each other about you. So this is where people are discussing in online forums. They're leaving reviews. This is the press. This is social media. This is recommendations. This is when people are talking about your brand, giving recommendations. And so the way we see it is we want to have really, really strong foundation to give you the most control over those leaves. So we're going to look at, all right, what would a brand with weak roots look like and some of the issues that you may have. So with weak roots, you don't know how to say who you are, what you do. You don't necessarily understand your audience. You've got a lot of ideas, but little distillation. Your trunk is going to be inconsistent. You're not going to have consistent designer messaging. Your language might be fuzzy, and you could be undifferentiated in your market. Your audience is going to have in your branches, they're going to remain unclear about your brand and your deliverables. And they're going to receive inconsistent messaging, which is going to affect that credibility and trust from staff members. I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting and you are in a situation where you overhear a staff member speaking about the brand and you're like, what? Where did they even get that? It's because they didn't have that strong root in the brand. And so then you're going to have a frustrating time trying to, align on those things. And you're going to be allocating resources improperly. And then finally, in the leaves, your audience, they don't know who you are. They don't have a reason to trust you. They're probably sharing erroneous information with others. They're going to be second guessing your quality. They could be criticizing friends or family when they choose your brand because it's so confusing. So then let's look at, here's some strong, healthy roots and what that looks like. So in your roots for when you have your strong positioning. This is where you understand your mission, your path, your SWOT, and how to, set the path accordingly. You're going to be able to articulate your idea. You're going to have a very consistent look and feel. You're going to be differentiated in the market, and you're going to have a well-articulated mission. In the branches, your audience is going to ask the right questions. They're going to interact discerningly, and they're also going to be able to select in and out. I don't know if anyone's ever, put up a lead gen on a website and you're getting all of the wrong folks that there aren't quite meeting the requirements of your business. We want to have that strength here. Your staff understands and communicates your brand guidelines. They provide consistent messaging, and you have, productive inquiries or productive interactions with inquiries. And then finally, your audience, when they're talking about you, they know who you are, they trust you, they share accurate information. They trust friends and family when they choose you, and they refer you in person and online. So that's why we want to have lots of happy, healthy leaves here. All right, so how do we do this? This is how we structure a positioning statement. And feel free to take a screenshot here, or again, you can download this in the end. So this is where you're defining what is your category of one. What can you claim that no one else can claim? This is always the X that Y's. And so this needs to be written in your voice. All of this needs to be, if that's something that you struggle with, professionals can help. So this is where you're describing your unique methods, what makes you different from the competition, your distinctive values, what's important to you, and then ultimately, what's your brand promise? What do you guarantee your audience will receive? This is, typically becomes your content on your website. You can use this, break it apart, use it for social media. Once you have a positioning statement and a value prop, also, like, we're big fans of using AI tools and using it the right way. Have a human do your positioning statement and value prop, plug that in, train your chat GPT on it, and they understand your voice and they can spit things out for you. That's a lot more accurate than trying to have AI tell you what your category of one is. So it's a great tool for that. Here's the value proposition. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I just want to give you the basic structure of it. So the value proposition, like, this is almost like this is your homepage copy, right? Here's your brand promise is what goes at the top here. That's your value prop statement. Then we have what are the 3 to 5 key messages that someone needs to know about your brand? Ideally, it's 3. Sometimes it's okay if there's 5. So what are the 3 key messages someone needs to understand? Is it quality? Is it, family friendly, and we give back? Something like that. How do we describe that? And then what are the reasons to believe? This is where you need to back up these statements. So this is where we use data. Is it, 10% of all sales went to charity and equaling X amount of dollars? Is it that, we prioritize staff training and X amount of hours were committed to our staff this year? So this is where we want those data points to back up your key messages. So let's get into building trust now that we have a strong foundation. So we could not find the exact quote. My husband and I were racking our brains. This is something we talk about all the time. I think he said something like this in Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain, so I'm not in quotes. It's, if the floors are dirty, don't order the shrimp. Meaning, like, if they're not bothering to clean the floor, they're not deveining their shrimp. And so this is something that we talk about whenever we're making decisions, like where we're going to eat, or we're like, we don't trust them. And so it's about building trust. So I don't know who's watching, if anyone's from the Myrtle Beach area. This is where I pulled these from. This is, these are brands that I would have a hard time going into. Is it maybe, is it not going to be a friendly and professional experience? Are the floors going to be dirty? Is the chicken going to be rubbery? There's a barrier to entry when a brand looks, unprofessional. I will say it took us, my parents used to have a house in Myrtle Beach. It took 20 years for us to finally go to Bimini's. It's actually very good, but it took us that long to get that recommendation to go. And it was right by their house. We would have gone all the time. Think about all the money that they lost because we, had this kind of barrier to entry. And so I wanted to kind of take a moment then to talk about, like, when we're looking at rebrands or brand expansions being scary, we don't want to be here. We don't want to have that barrier to entry. And these are just some really successful ones, of course, that a lot of you might be familiar with and some might not be, that we really enjoy. I don't know if you know this, Tom, but did you know that Zaxby's was originally called Zax?
I did not.
Now you do. So here's kind of the life of the Zaxby's brand. And that, you'll see that they really simplified things. There is not a big change here. They just fixed their font and they've been able to keep this one since 2017. So that to me is a really strong rebrand. Did you know that Airbnb was originally Air Bed and Breakfast?
That one I did know a little bit about, that they had a blow up mattress as kind of their backstory. There's kind of a cute storyline behind why they did it, but
Yeah.
only because of the story that goes along with it. That's the only reason I remember.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I remember this brand. I do not remember this one. They clearly hated it. They didn't stay on this one for very long, but boy, is that such a fantastic brand that they ended up with.
Hmm.
And how this represents like their core values of connection as well. It's like the spot on a map. It's so many great things. It's an A. We love it. And they've kept this for 10 years, which is fantastic considering they did not stick with brands because they were having issues. They finally figured it out. So go Airbnb. Of course, we have Chick-fil-A, beloved brand. I didn't know this was their original chicken. We're all familiar with the C. And of course, they've been around for a while. I actually did some work with Chick-fil-A for a while. And one of my favorite things I noticed, there's not been a big difference. Can you see the difference between the 98 versus the 12? It's very
Out,
simple.
outside of just the color is a little different. One's a little more orange to me, and the
Yep.
other's a little more red. But
Yeah, there's
outs
a little
and
bit more of a purple in it, which it's very subtle, but it's red.
yeah,
The B
yeah.
is closed.
Ah, okay.
Very, very simple change. And now when
Yep.
you're looking, you'll know if it's a new sign or an old sign. It's been a long time since they did this rebrand, so most of them have been fixed by now. But you used to be able to tell which ones had the new logo. This is my favorite rebrand ever. This logo was not going to take down Blockbuster. They rebranded. I don't have the full path, but boy, oh boy, do we love their existing brand. It's so dramatic. It's so beautiful. But I mean, what a difference between where they started and where they are now. So yeah, rebrands aren't bad. And so why do we trust these brands? Consistency. That's what we were alluding to earlier, and why that's so important. So I've been doing a lot of reading and research too about consistency and what that does. And what it does is it triggers memory in the brain. And so 80% of that ability to trigger that memory is color recognition. And so at the end, I actually have some fun color theory that we can go through. So here's one of the brands that we did actually. This is Pancake Social. They're based here in Atlanta. They've got 2 locations. And so I just wanted to show an example of like that consistency across the board. It's not so consistent that it's the same. You'll see that there's different versions that we use of the logo. There's different elements. There's different amounts. So we developed this kind of motif pattern. They had like a folk Swedish inspiration that we were able to pull from. And so you'll see it's used. It's used throughout the brand, but sometimes sparingly and sometimes full force. This is their floor. This represents one of our favorite times a client really trusted us, is that we developed this tile pattern for them. It turned out to be insanely expensive to get it done. And so the owners got together, they had a stencil made of the design we made, and it was like over 220 tiles were made of 20-inch squares that they all hand painted to make it happen. And I feel pretty confident claiming that this is one of the most photographed floors in all of Atlanta, because look how fun it is. We've got pancakes and bacon and coffee and maple leaves and blueberries, and it just makes people happy. And so that was like a great way to, extend the brand into the space. And then they get so much social media marketing just from people, taking pictures with their shoes on the tile. It's awesome. Oh, and here's my quote about 80% of a person's ability to remember. So here's, a checklist I wanted to put together of the items to kind of go through and in this order for that brand consistency. So we want to make sure that our core messaging is aligned. This is your mission, your vision, your, positioning statement, your value proposition is clear. Not only that, but it's in your voice and tone. Are you friendly? Are you serious? Are you brief? Are you romantic? Making sure that that voice and tone is consistent across the board. And again, once you have that nailed down, that's when you plug it into AI and tell them to keep it in this voice and tone. They do a good job once they've been trained, the robots. Making sure that your visual identity is really cohesive. Again, like your colors, having that recognition. You should have a primary and a secondary colors. There should not be a case where, an intern is getting funky with your branding because you ask them to use Canva. That's where things go really bad. We want to make sure that your typography is also consistent across the board. My team, everyone uses the exact same font. Their signatures are all the same in their emails because it's still part of the brand interaction for Treebird. It's down to that. And so making sure if someone's putting a sign up, an out of order sign on a restroom, it needs to be on brand. That's not where we're going to get funky and use like Curl's font.
Hey, Jaci, I'd love to put a request in and put you on the spot to see if you can. Is there a download that maybe this checklist could be available that's on your website or somewhere we could direct people to?
Yeah.
Because this is a great slide. Or even if you add it, that would then someone downloads it, can maybe get their email and add them to your newsletter or reach out to them. But this is a really great slide.
Oh, for sure. That's it's in the deck. You'll be able to there's a link at the end. There's a QR code. It's on our
Oh,
website.
perfect.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
absolutely. Yeah. Also making sure that your imagery and photography is consistent, especially like on your website versus social media. We want to make sure that your content is consistent. Talking about social media as well, that's where things kind of start to get haywire. That's where we want to make sure that we have that consistency there. Websites also can get a little haywire. That's where, the brand could be really tight everywhere and you look at your website and it's a mess. A lot of times it's just a reskinning that needs to happen. It doesn't mean that you need to do a full, many thousands of dollars rebuild. Also double checking your email and newsletter templates and your brand guidelines. Those should be revisited. I think it's a lot to ask quarterly, but at least once a year, pull out your brand guidelines and make sure that those are consistent and if they need a refresh or not. So while you're, thinking of all of these things for your consistency, I wanted to give a couple of warnings. And so one is beware of trends. I don't know if you remember when this font was everywhere, like every brand had it. It was on every social media post. Every notebook had this font. Now it just looks super dated. It looks like, a home-based brand, if anything. And so I would say if you find yourself wanting to brand in a trendy style, you're going to look really dated in a couple of years. So if you're branding for your audience and you're using that level of sophistication, you shouldn't need to do a full rebrand. None of our clients in 12 years have ever had to do a full rebrand. They've expanded, if the business is still around. But a lot of brands have expanded, but they've not had to do a full rebrand because it was so carefully made for their audience. So I would just say careful about that. I would also say templates beware. Canva can be a fantastic tool, but and I think this is very cute looking. Anyone can have this though. Anyone can have this, which is an issue, especially when, I don't know if you're familiar, Tom, with the Meta ad auction. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
how they auction your paid ads. And what
Yes.
Meta does is they prioritize original content. And so if you're using a real popular Canva template, they're not going to be prioritizing your ad. Uh, and so I think they imagine too, if you're not spending money on your branding and your marketing, you're not necessarily going to be spending a ton of money on your meta ads. And so they want to make sure that they're promoting companies that are going to be spending more and seeing more of a return. And so that would just be my beware of Canva templates, especially using anything that's really popular and mess up your ad revenue. So here I put together a branding oath for us to all abide by. And so, you know, you're going to understand your audience is your hero and the North Star of your brand. I shall deeply know their thoughts, desires, and buying process to ensure that every brand decision is designed to serve and resonate with their journey. I shall not use a template to create my brand. For every brand is unique, is the soul behind it, and no template shall cage its individuality. Number three is I shall understand that the brand is a living and breathing entity and requires multiple versions of the logo to thrive in different environment, be it horizontal or vertical or simplified or detailed. The brand shall remain its truest self at all times. I shall always refer to the brand guidelines before I create, especially please make sure that your staff are trained regularly on your brand guidelines. And it doesn't matter if we're creating, like I said, an out of order sign, or if we're doing your entire presentation deck or a proposal or anything, we must refer to the brand guidelines. The guidelines are my roadmap, my North Star, and without them, I am adrift in a sea of inconsistency. Number five is I shall recognize that brand consistency builds trust. I will not undermine the work done to establish the brand's image, form, and consistency lies credibility, and in credibility lies success. Sound good? Sound easy enough?
Love it.
Yeah, you feeling empowered?
Yes.
So also, I feel like we've got some extra time. I wanted to provide some fun color theory. Are you good with that?
Love it. Yeah. I love the use of colors. I'm not great at understanding it, but I enjoy it. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I don't have that mind for it, but I really enjoy this stuff.
Well, and everything we do too, like we love color theory because it's a way that we can use to manipulate people in a good way, right? And so there's just some kind of like high level. I've got some fun examples on the next page too, some color
And,
theory.
and JC, I'll jump in. I just want to be mindful. Manipulation, I think, is a strong word and has a
Yeah,
negative connotation. I think a better word choice is we're influencing people
that's so much
to,
better. Yes.
yeah, I think that's what we're trying to say is to influence people to maybe influence a type of emotion or influence a some imagery or influence a memory or something, right? That's really what
Beautiful.
we're
Yes, we're
referring to.
influencing. We're not
Yes.
manipulating. Right. So with that in mind, yeah. So warm colors feel warm. And so that's if we want to, evoke energy and passion. That's where we want to have these kind of warm tones. That's reds, oranges, and yellows. Cool temperatures, those are a sense of calm, relaxation, and serenity. So just keep that in mind too. If you're wanting people to feel really calm, let's not use red. So red is a fantastic color. So it is the color of humanity. Do you know, Tom, without reading, do you know why red is the color of humanity?
Well, I did read the first sentence.
Oh, so you already
So
know. Yeah,
but that's the only reason
it is the color of
yeah,
blood,
I
and
would
that's
have
how
not
we
guessed that.
associate,
Yeah.
we associate red with humanity. It's of course love and danger. It can evoke strong emotions, and so why it's often used really strategically in brands. There was a time period in the 2000s where everyone wanted red. It was a very popular color, and now I think it's used a little bit more. Thoughtfully because it was not being used appropriately, I think. It's a very powerful color. So blue is the most popular favorite color. Of course, it's associated with trust, stability, and professionalism. Say if you are in an interview or on a webinar and you want to be seen as trustworthy, you should wear blue. And so, it's a fantastic color for professional brands. You'll see that's why a lot of banks use it. Yellow is linked, of course, to happiness and optimism because of sunlight. However, too much yellow can cause anxiety. So if you're ever in a situation or your family is in a situation where perhaps maybe they're in the hospital and they're needing painkillers, make sure there's no yellow around. It's too energetic, so it can lessen the effects of pain medications. So there was a time period my husband was actually in the hospital. They put a yellow blanket on his bed, and I hit it and got in a little bit of a fight with the nurse because they
Hmm.
wanted the yellow blanket out. Yeah, but I was like, I don't want him to have too much energy. Green, of course, is the color of nature and money. It's a fantastic color that evokes growth, balance, renewal, financial prosperity. You'll see that's another great, color that see in banks. Green changes the most. I don't know if you remember also about 15 years ago, this color green was everywhere. I picked this one on purpose, and now it looks so out of date. So I would just say be really careful with your greens. They have they change the most. And the reason is that there's cool greens, there's warm greens, there's yellow greens, there's so many types of greens that trends in greens change significantly. Purple used to be really super rare color. It was really hard to make. And so that's why it's associated with luxury, with royalty and wealth. It's seen as like a premium brand. That's why Truist uses that purple, is that it's seen as like a premium brand, the purple label. It's also the color of nostalgia and magic. Just a little fun extra. So a lot of people, millennials especially, are really gravitate towards gray. So gray is the color of indecision. So I always say be really careful with gray. There's a lot of houses with a lot of white and gray because they're making a decision to not make a decision. And so I would always say be really careful if you're a brand that is relying on this color. You're saying we don't know who we are. So just be really careful with gray. I would make a commitment. Uh, this is a fun one too. Tom, can you tell which of these grays is darker or lighter?
Mm, not really. No.
That's good.
Uh,
That's right. They're the
it,
exact same color. They're the same gray.
okay.
So it's about simultaneous contrast is that colors can look different depending on the colors around it. So this is why in your colors, you need to have primary and secondary because of the way colors play with each other. They're different on light backgrounds versus dark backgrounds. And so to ensure that you have a brand that works in any environment, you need to have all of those different versions in your brand toolkit for your logo. Another fun kind of color theory is color priming, which is that people, if they've experienced a color prior to experiencing the brand, it can have a positive effect on them ahead of time. And so, if we're talking about a natural brand and we're making a commercial or something before they even see the brand, we're going to put a lot of green into that to start to influence people to have thoughts of nature, health, and eco-friendliness before they even see the brand. And of course, I've talked about this several times about color consistency is crucial for brand recall. This is Coca-Cola's exact red. And that's for a reason they don't deviate from it at all because they want you to know the Coca-Cola red. Brand or color also can affect your perception of time. Warm colors make time feel like it's passing faster, while cool colors can slow down the perception of time. So if you're thinking about if you want people to get in and out of your dining room quickly, I'd have a warmer tone dining room. If you want people to hang out a while and slow down the perception of time, I'd go with some cooler tones. And so you can use that in your interior design to influence people there. And this is just one of my favorite color theory stories is this Baker Miller pink, which was seen to have this really calming effect. And there was a lot of studies done on it. However, the calming effect only lasted about 15 to 30 minutes. Unfortunately, a lot of prisons, I don't remember the exact date, they painted their walls this Baker Miller pink because they wanted to have a calming effect on their inmates. The unfortunate part is that overexposure to this color causes a rebound effect. And so there were prison riots kept breaking out until they figured out that it was the color that was agitating their inmates and causing them to riot. It was the power of pink. So those are my color theory stories. And so, like I said too, here's links so that you can get the deck. You can scan it because I am in marketing and branding. You will enter your email. I'll send you a note. It's not a ton. We're fun. There's also a free brand audit that you can take. And then, of course, if you want to get a hold of me, you can find me at treebirdbranding.com. Here's my email address is Jaci at Treebird Branding, or you can always find me on LinkedIn. So, Tom, did you have any questions, burning questions that came up while we were going through this?
No, I mean, I thought this was great. I mean, you shared some phenomenal insight here on branding, what to think about, and I think especially for someone that's tuning in that maybe is thinking about branding, rebranding, especially a lot of clients and people we talk to, they have an existing brand, but now they're looking at franchising or they are franchising and they say, well, maybe it's time to just tweak this or update it a bit. So I think even just going through some of the progressions that you showed, that it's still the same brand, but those updates really made a big difference. You could see
Yeah,
that happening. So
it's the door opener.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think this is great here, JC. So let's make sure we can include. I'll include these links for someone that ends up just watching or listening to this on a podcast episode. I'll include these deck to get a copy of the deck that she shared and the brand audit. So if someone ends up just listening in, we'll make sure those links that you've provided there are available for someone to click on and be able to get a copy of that or schedule a free brand audit. So thank you very much, JC. This has been wonderful.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you to everyone for tuning in. This has been just another great edition of our Franchise Your Business webinar series. And JC, just so grateful for your time and for you to share your wisdom and expertise with us. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you at the next session. Thanks so much.